Good evening and welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Hopefully my audio is coming through okay. OBS is saying so, and I think my desktop audio is piping in correctly. So how is everybody?
Excellent.
Good.
Slacking.
All right, and I get it. In case you don't know, my name is Cubicle Nate, or you can call me Nathan. I don't care, whatever you want to call me. And then I have my co-hosts here, Eric, Eris, and Steve. They're going to keep me on track because I fall off the tracks quicker than a insert old railroad pun here. So each show we're going to have a talk about something in Linux, a project, generally a Linux distribution. Like today we're going to talk about Slackware. We could also talk about an application or anything that's really Linux tech and open source related is on the table for discussion. So how has everyone's a week gone with testing Slackware?
Rocky.
All right, this is going to be some good talking.
Absolutely fantastic.
All right, before we get to that, we're going to see what someone's been doing in Linux this week, or tech. What have they been doing? What have they been teching about, Linuxing about? I don't know if anyone has anything they want to kick out there.
Well, I was making a video yesterday about auto login for XFCE.
Okay.
And when I set up my Plex server with the Peppermint distro, auto login wasn't as simple as what I thought, because you have to actually go into a comp file and adjust that and put your username in there. So I found that quite interesting. And the other thing I also found interesting was that in Ubuntu 21.10, it's a different path to that file. And then I discovered that MX just has it within its tools, just click a box and it's done. So there's so many different variables across the XFCE board that changes. And I have to think, because it's different in Peppermint being based on Debian, and it's different in Ubuntu 21.10 because that's an up-to-date Ubuntu base. So I found that quite interesting. So I thought I'd make a video about that. And then Dolphin was telling me that you can actually edit in a text file and save, although it didn't work in GNOME desktop. I'm interested to try on some XFCE desktops. Maybe he's talking mainly XFCE, maybe KDE. I'm going to have to check that out, see if it works.
Well, cool. So what would be your reason for doing this?
Well, with the Plex server and running like just desktop, I've got no keyboard, no mouse connected to it. It's just connected to, it's got no screen connected. Mm-hmm. It's only connected to the network, so I can use Plex on the TV. Okay. So if I want to turn it off, I just hit the power button, and you go to the power settings, and it says, when you hit the power button, what do you want to do? Shut down. And so I'll just press the button shut down, press the button start up. That's all I needed. So, and that just serves the movies that I want to watch.
Okay. All right. So I kind of like didn't fully grasp. So you actually have a specific server that you turn on and off on demand, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. So what kind of hardware is this running on? I'm curious.
I don't know what the hardware is, to be honest. I can't remember. It's not overly powerful. It's one of those Acer things that I showed, that Veriton thing. I showed in one of my videos. I'm not really sure what the specs are, but all I know is it works.
Well, if it works, that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
Now you have it loading into a desktop, though. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's using Peppermint.
Okay. Now,
and
why?
I tried
to.
Yeah, go on. Ask a question.
All right. So what I'm curious about is, why are you having it load into a desktop if it's a headless server?
Because I don't have much experience with servers and installing servers. So I'm a graphical person. I prefer to work with a graphical environment.
So when you have to use it, then if you have to go in there for a reason, you have a desktop environment waiting for you that you can do whatever with. Would that be inaccurate?
I can do whatever instead of having to. I do SSH into it and update it, and I do that from here.
Right.
It's over in the other room, so I can do that. I know how to do that. That's fine. But yeah, if I want to do anything on the desktop, I chose Peppermint because it has minimal applications and not many installed, next to nothing. So that's why I chose Peppermint to do that.
Okay. All right. Now I'm picking up what you're laying down. So I guess I had assumptions in my head that I was overriding probably
Right.
what you were saying, and so
Right.
yeah,
That's
I
all
got
good.
you. Well, excellent. That's cool. I'm excited that you got that working the way you like, and it's pretty cool. That's really cool. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to share along with the happy class? Or
Well, outside of some of the troubles I've been having with Peppermint on UEFI when I was setting it up, and I had been on, like XFCE for quite a while before I went to POP. I never realized that the desktop environment, set your wallpaper, that if you have dual monitors, it is like probably one of the best that I've ever had with setting different wallpapers on different monitors. You bring up, the wallpaper changer. You set the wallpaper on the one monitor. You drag the program over to the next monitor and set the next one up. I'm like, holy crap! All my years, I've never known this.
Yeah, you know how many
quick.
times you probably went nuts for 2 hours trying to figure that out? And it was
Well,
that simple.
Well, when I was on it, I actually at the time I didn't have the dual monitors. It wasn't until I was on POP that I had the dual monitors.
Yeah, I was surprised when you brought it up. It kind of really freaked me
I'm like,
out.
wow, this is cool. So thank you,
interesting.
XFCE.
Yeah, I didn't wasn't aware of that. So in Plasma, I just open them up per desktop. I've never actually thought to try dragging the dialog or window over and seeing if that would work also. But now I want to try
I'm
that.
not sure if it works on KDE. I know when I was had KDE Fedora on the system, that I had consistent problems. Anytime I booted into the system, it would only show the wallpaper on the one monitor, and I had to have to kill the desktop and start it up again, and then the wallpaper would show up on the other one. But I guess that was a little bit of a bug that's been known for a while.
The hard part's finding matching wallpapers.
This is true. If you have two different walls, and you want to match the
If
wallpaper.
you use nitrogen,
getting them to line
you
up,
can.
it's really hard to get them to line up.
If you use nitrogen, it will line up, or you can get one big long wallpaper and they'll cross over between monitors.
Interesting. I've never used that. Okay, so let's move on to the main topic. So Steve.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about, or some of us are going to talk about Slackware today. What we want to remember is that anytime that we do a distribution, it's probably a labor of love, or is a labor of love, and Slackware has a long history of labor of love. So as guys are doing the review, keep it, don't be so negative. Try to keep things positive or in a constructive feedback, so the developers can learn and fix things as needed. Eris, how was the poll?
So I made a poll on Telegram saying, how is it the Slackware exploration going? 18% said Slackware is amazing. 18% said Slackware is okay. 12% said I'm not having a good time with Slackware. 37% said I'm not interested in trying Slackware. 0% said I'm unable to do the exploration. 15% said I'm not interested in doing the explorations in general. 0% said other. That's it.
Well, I will have to say right off the bat, I'm not interested in trying Slackware. That percentage was way lower than I anticipated. Just saying. So here was who here has been having an amazing time with Slackware. So Peter is. Dan kind of put his hand up a little, like,
yeah, mine's so. Mine's in between. It's good and I'm amazing. I don't know.
Zero
It depends
issues.
on the day.
Yeah. Well, cool. This is going to be a fun discussion. So thank you, Eris, for doing that poll. And I know, Eric, if you want to don't do the Linux user space level of detail, or we're going to run out of show.
Right. And that, of course, would entail me having the notes open.
That's right. I'll stall and I'll do some stand-up.
I stink.
Here at this
I'm sorry.
it's all good. I'm personally I wanted to really try Slackware since I've never installed Slackware. So someone who's been using Linux for quite some time has never, even thought to try it. And actually I kind of sort of thought it was totally dead, but it's not.
I tried it.
I-
Go ahead.
I wanted to try it, and I wanted to try it side by side with the Slackware 2.3 I got in 1995. I met a guy at a gas station and got the CD for like $5 or $10.
Ooh, that
I
sounds
thought I was
sketchy.
doing something bad, but
You thought it
know
was a
what?
rock band.
Pirate.
But I couldn't find the boot and root floppies, and I don't even have a floppy. So I wasn't able to do the evaluation side by side, but that was my hopes. I really wanted to do it side by side with Slackware 15. All right, we'll go back to Eric now.
No, it's fine. I installed the Slackware a couple years ago with Serge's tutelage, and I did it as a live stream. And yeah, it was him telling me a lot of commands and me just going, "Oh, okay," and basically going through the motions and realizing it's probably not something I'm going to be doing. But anyway, so about Slackware, and as Nate said, not to go into so much detail. Yeah, absolutely. And if you really want the absolute like nitty gritty detail of every possible like release and everything, Leo goes through it in about an hour on Linux user space. So if you don't enjoy this abridged version, then feel free to go check that out. It's actually really interesting to have been such a long-lived, distribution and just software in general. There aren't that many examples of software that live as long as Slackware has. So
This is true.
So it was it is the distinction of being the oldest distribution that's still being maintained. It was created on July 17th, 1993, and next year it'll celebrate its 30th anniversary, which is that's amazing, right? Patrick Volkerding,
Run.
yeah, seriously, is the benevolent dictator for life of the project. The name Slackware comes from the fact that the distribution started as a private side project with no intended commitment. To prevent it from being taken too seriously at first, Volkerding gave it a humorous name, and which stuck even after Slackware became a serious project. The aim of Slackware is to produce the most Unix-like Linux distribution out there. Slackware compiles with the published Linux standards. The published Linux standards, such as the file system standards, simplicity and stability, is paramount for Slackware. In other words, as vanilla and default as possible. On February 2nd, 2022, the following announcement was made on Slackware's homepage. Well, folks, in spite of the dire predictions of YouTube pundits, this morning the Slackhog emerged from its development den, did not see its shadow, and Slackware 15 has been officially released. Another 6 weeks or years of the development treadmill averted. So there's always been a really, as Leo sort of went through and in his recounting the history, the release notes have been where Patrick has been, vocal and will communicate with, with the end users and everyone. And apparently over time, he's, he has a pretty good sense of humor. And so he'll do things like, like I just read, and kind of keep it fresh and interesting and fun. And some notable additions to Slackware in 15 are the 5.15 LTS kernel, KDE Plasma 25th edition, switched from Console Kit 2 to Elongind. ELOGIND. Sorry, I don't know what that is. Adoption of PAM, Pipewire support, Wayland session, in addition to X11. There are, it still comes as 32 and 64-bit. So there are ISOs for both of those. And I think that's basically it.
Well, excellent. Yeah. Thank you for not going into the Leo depth on that. But it is a very, very storied history. And I think that just, the fact that Slackware's been around this long, 30 years now, is actually pretty amazing. I don't know of any software projects that have been around that long. Is there any?
Debian is close at being 3 months younger.
Okay. Well, there we go. So I want to check from here, from a show of hands, who has installed Slackware. I'm not going to say this time. All right. So I see Eris, Jindus, Vince, Mark. Did you say you installed it? I'm sorry. Colin, Peter, Dan.
I just ran the live this time.
Okay, that's fine. So you actually you
sort of
played with it. Yeah. All right. So you sort of played with it. I did install it myself too. And so let's get on with the installation process. So if you don't have anything on that to say on that, that's fine. Cool. No big deal. I used the Slackware documentation, the wiki, and I went through that. I read it very carefully, which is hard for me to do sometimes. So I made the font really big so my eyes wouldn't do that whole wall of text thing that it sometimes does. I don't know if you ever had that problem, like when there's too much text, like you just kind of like your eyes glaze over. I have that problem. So anyway, and I'd like to know something here. Now I got it installed successfully, but I was going through the process, and it gave the instructions for fdisk before cfdisk. Is there a good reason why you'd put the harder one first to make the easier one seem easier, or what?
I don't know, but I would say that fdisk has a bigger version number. That's one difference, I guess.
I guessed edition, but CFS is a little newer.
Yeah, I just thought it was just really odd that they did it like that. So anyway, because I used fdisk because I didn't see the cfdisk instructions because I was a little bit of an idiot, and so I went through it bit by bit. Okay, fdisk existed before cfdisk according to Dan, so there is that. But I got through it. I didn't use cfdisk at all. I wish I would have. fdisk did fine. It just took a while to do, and it wasn't really fun to do. But I just thought it was a little bonkers. Did anybody was anyone smarter than me and just use cfdisk right away, right out of the gate?
CFdisk, definitely. CFdisk is amazing. Simple to use. If I can use it, anyone can.
I installed with the live version.
Okay.
And I cheated because I used gparted that comes included with the live version to set up my partition.
Oh.
And then I did the live version without any other help. I think it does pretty much everything once you use the live version, except for like the partitions. And it even sets up Lilo and I think your password. Oh yeah, it does your username too, the live version.
Lilo, isn't it? Lilo now.
There's Lilo and Lilo. I don't know exactly what the difference is.
Lilo was used for EFI, UEFI, and Lilo was just used for your normal DOS. What's it called? Your other UEFI and the other one, Legacy. Yeah, Lilo was just used for Legacy. Lilo was used for UEFI install.
Okay. I wonder why Lilo over Grub.
It's simpler.
What? I'm sorry. What was that? It's simpler, and what did you say, Vince?
Oh, where's Stitch? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Where is Stitch?
It's my understanding that with Lilo you cannot dual boot, so that's one notable difference. It might be simpler though than Grub. Grub is very complicated, I think.
I used to dual boot on Lilo all the time back in the day. I don't know what's changed.
When you get to the end of the installation, I didn't use the wiki. I used a dude called OTB. He does a really nice video, and I went step by step with this guy in installing it. And I had troubles. I had this trouble with Void too. When I get to fdisk or cfdisk, for some reason things go bonkers there, and it just don't turn out at the end where like you want it. But if you take the disk and you completely plow it under with gpart and make sure it's fresh and clean and there is no partitions on it, it works. That's the only installation issue I really had. But yeah, he shows you how to actually do Grub at the end of his video, along with sudo and installing a bunch of other necessities.
I see Peter put in the chat. He used Old Tech Blokes, a video, to as your install guide.
He goes through the standard edition.
Yep.
And he does pretty much the install, like everything. He shows you like the little things you need to know, like how to update your kernel. That's just kind of as straightforward as it seems. and he makes a follow-up video where he goes into installing other packages that are not within the main repo.
I should have checked that out. So
Yeah, we cheated.
yeah, you did.
No, we utilized.
Well done.
Well, see, I didn't even get to the point of, I tried to install things using the package tool, and you need I think it's a .txz file, which I was trying to find. And they're hard to find. There's not many around. So basically, if you do the whole install, which I remember Aris said the other week, just install everything and remove what you don't want. I think you said that, didn't you, Aris? I'm pretty sure.
Yes, the installer, I think either the standard one maybe. I know the standard one does it. I don't remember if the live version does it. It even gives you an option to not install some packages. Like you can not install XFCE maybe if you don't want, or Plasma if you don't want. It doesn't have that much granular control, but it does give you some options that way.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I found it really interesting that they had XFCE and both KDE checked off to install, which was really bizarre. Why would you have? Because I checked. I unticked XFCE.
They want you to put in everything because the dependency problems are all resolved at installation. After you install everything, then it's up to you to break it because it comes unbroken with everything they throw in it.
I just unchecked the XFCE desktop and the games, but I installed everything else. So I haven't had any problems with it. It installed fine, but I would have thought that XFCE and KDE don't mix very well. That's why I didn't do that. I never mix KDE with any G2K desktop. I've never done that because it causes issues, but maybe it's different in this case. I don't know.
I mix them all the time in OpenSUSE.
Do you?
I never have any issues.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I installed it all and no problems.
Now,
Actually,
the one question, sorry,
ahead.
where are we
No, go
at
ahead.
with this? Because can I just ask any question about this? Or
Yeah, go right
I
ahead.
never updated the system because I didn't get to the point of finding out where to update the system. Does anybody update the system?
Yes.
What's the command?
Yes.
Watch old tech bloke.
No, I think
He actually gives a list of commands.
So
it's basically after you install it, you're supposed to do slack pack space upgrade -all. That
Okay.
upgrades everything, but there's some commands you got to do before that, like slack package update space GPG. Then you go slack pack update. Then you go slack pack update all.
Actually, Dan missed a step. So the first thing I think you need to do is you need to set a mirror because it does not come with any mirrors by default. So you do have to,
That is true.
and you also have to do the GPG keys. So that you have the keys. Then you do update, and then you install any new packages. Then you update all packages. I think that's how it goes. Something like that.
Exactly.
All right. So
See, we took notes while we were in class.
good job, Dan. I think you're one of two that took notes. Okay, one of three.
So after you do all that, you also
Wonderful.
have to go into there's like MK init RD or something, and that's to make the file system, like for the kernel, like the I forgot, like init RAM file system, something like that. And you can do it that way with that command, or you can go into pkg tool or tools, and then
Yeah,
it
that's
gives
what
you
I
an
was
option.
using.
Yes.
So that the kernel actually works. Otherwise, the kernel will not work, the kernel update.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down too.
So I guess since we're talking about applications now, since we got past the installation bit of it, here's something that I don't understand. So I went through the process, using the documentation on the Slackware wiki. I came at this from kind of the same direction that I came at OpenSUSE or that I went at Fedora. The same kind of thing, like not knowing exactly what to do, but just doing a very simple search. Install software Slackware. And so I got a very nice page of information installing software. It gave me an overview on all that. Installing pre-built packages. Now, never once does it tell you all the steps you have to do. And I searched in the wiki. Does it tell you that where to do all the steps for installing new software? Like not anywhere that I could find. And so I'm curious to know how is that an acceptable level of documentation from Slackware?
Because when there's a there's a repository, I forgot the name of it, slackbuilds.org. You go there and you get a couple of packages. One's a builder package and the other one's the tarball. And the builder package actually works over the tarball and shoves it in your Slackware. When I got the flat
Where is
pack
that site?
one.
Could you share that site with me? Because I did a lot of searching on installing Flatpak for Slackware.
Shared.
Someone got it in there, but when I went to install Flatpak, it said that my bubble wrap was out of date. I needed a newer version of bubble wrap. So I looked around for the bubble wrap. I went and got the bubble wrap from this website and it didn't work. So I started getting my packages from GitHub and building them. And they come with, if you do a standard build, like you're building it for SUSE or something like that, you use the config and then the make install, you can use GitHub packages. But because every package I got from this website said I need another one. After that, it was OS tree. My OS tree was too old. I need a new OS tree. So I went to FlatHub and got a newer OS tree. For some reason, I still couldn't get it to take the Flatpak program. Maybe I need to find another place for that. You get to the point where you get too fatigued to chase stuff around and build it all over the place. You got to take a break.
We did have one thing against us with Slack builds. When we were given the challenge of testing Slackware, Slack builds was still in 14.2. All the builds were designed for that. It took them a week to convert over to 15. So I waited a week before I used it.
So the way I was able to build Flatpak, and the way you do it is you look at a package you want, of course, right? And then within the package, there's like a README file or like the page, and it tells you like all the different dependencies. Now, you have to go into every single dependency and check, does that dependency require another dependency? And if it does, you got to do that one first, and then check if that one doesn't require another dependency, and then build your way back up into the tree. And then at the end, Flatpak will work. And it did work for me, but I was not able to install Zoom. I don't know why it didn't work for me, but I was able to install Telegram through Flatpak after building it with Slack builds. And I also built the Mate desktop, but I used a different website. I'll put the link on the YouTube channel.
You got really lucky.
I'm with Nate on this one. I don't mind going over the speed humps to get things done. But if you cannot find the documentation on the website itself that's providing the so-called way to do things, then that makes it quite difficult. Then you got to go find and search other things. I would have thought just a simple update and all that would have been quite easy to find. But it's not. I remember, I think I did go through the same thing as you, Nate. And I probably, because it was last week and we were doing the app image thing, I just sort of let it go this week. So I didn't follow it up. But when it gets difficult like that, time just becomes, if you haven't got the time, it becomes difficult.
If there was posted in Telegram, OTB's install and JD Ware's install, they were both several times.
And I appreciate those guys' videos because they do some great videos. But the thing is, it all comes down to the fact that it's Slackware, there's their wiki, show me how to update, just do a simple thing, update, and this is where you get your packages from, right? That's what I was expecting.
It could even be an external reference too, is fine. It could be outside the wiki, it's okay. But the issue that I had just as and I'm not like a newbie in Linux world, I can find what I want pretty easily. I can do a lot of things. I wouldn't call myself an expert, maybe a seasoned novice. I think is probably a good
Yeah,
way to,
that's
good way to
what
put
I
it.
call myself at the best.
Yep.
And I like to write documentation for OpenSUSE. So if I don't fully understand how to do something, I'll dig into the documentation and I'll just, what that's out there, and I'll pull pieces together and make it work. And so I didn't have the time to actually to dig into in the same way that I would like a problem, in OpenSUSE, because, there's that motivation, motivation. And so for me, it was how long am I willing to search for an answer to a problem to see if somebody else had done that or whatnot. And I think because I didn't have the the background knowledge on using Slackware, and I couldn't
That's true.
find basic stuff in their wiki, I got very quickly well, actually I laughed, because when I get frustrated I start to laugh, and that's just how I deal with frustration. Anyway, and so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to use what I have right now and just kind of evaluate it from there. But I mean little things, they're just, I don't even need creature comforts really. I just need someone to leave a sticky note someplace to show me like where the milk is. That's really all I need, and I'm fine. And I don't think that they did a good job of leaving a sticky note anywhere in the documentation or in the desktop when you arrive at it. So you really have to dig hard. And I think that's not good. I mean, I don't really care for Arch. I think the way Arch does a lot of things is just backwards, and just it doesn't make sense to me why they do a lot of things. But at least they document their crazy in their wiki very well. So I do appreciate that. If you have to hopscotch through so you don't fall through the floor of Arch, I got it. At least it's there. But the documentation for Slackware was not like that. I mean, I couldn't even navigate myself around searching through their wiki. Pretty heavy. What do you got, Eris?
So I was gonna say, the way I understand Slackware is, it's the most Unix, right? It's like they do the official repos. They give you like a working system. You can do a lot with the default system. Like it has like several web browsers, like a lot of programs. You can do like a lot of things. You shouldn't need anything. Maybe you probably will, but you shouldn't need anything. And there's actually so you shouldn't need anything. So they give you the base, and then other people, since it's open source, they're supposed to build upon Slackware. And there's actually an easy way that bypasses everything. There's a package manager called SLPKG. Now, this package manager is a third party, but apparently a lot of people use it. Does dependency resolution, dependency visualization, multiple options, multiple repositories, easy configuration, fully configurable, and it just works. It's just kind of like APT, like your traditional package manager. Now this is third party, but they Slackware themselves are not going to support it, because they're just doing like the base, and then everybody else is supposed to expand upon it. That's my understanding. I'll put the link on YouTube chat.
And that's totally fine. No problem with that. Then leaving some kind of a breadcrumb would be at least be useful. It's fine in doing it the Unix way. I get that. Lots of little bits chained together to make a whole. But when you don't know where the other bits are, it makes that philosophy kind of, it doesn't satisfy that philosophy in my view.
Well, how many maintainers do they actually have for this project?
I don't know.
See, the thing is,
It looks like they're
Slackware,
short-handed. There's like a couple of people that handle it. And that's why the wiki's kind of wacky.
see, the thing is, Slackware, like, how it has their benevolent dictator for life. Everything I think has to go through the main guy. It's kind of like, in some ways, like the Linux kernel. But I mean, the Linux kernel now, even though it goes to Linus, he has like lieutenants, which are who are in charge of different parts of the kernel. Well, this, I guess, everything, like the whole system, has to be approved by the main dev.
That's fair. I mean, it is his project.
I think it comes down to the fact that, excuse me, if you decide you want to run Slackware, you're going to get to know it, get to know how to do things, and you'll become familiar with it. And for me, I'm not familiar with Slackware at all. I went gung-ho into the install, as I normally do. All I had to do was figure out how to start the installer, see if this was there. I was fine from there on. But it was post-install that I sort of struggled to find how to install things. I did get a couple of things installed, but at the end of the day, it did have a lot of applications installed on there anyway. But it's probably just a few that I probably needed, like Zoom, which Aris mentioned, and things like that. If it got to the point where I had to build from source, I'm out.
So did anybody get any applications working or anyone specific?
I didn't.
Come on, Peter, share.
Okay, I installed a program called Barrier, which is a KVM for mouse and keyboard. I use it on all my machines, and it took 4 packages, 3 dependencies, and the package itself. I use the Slack builds, no problem. That works great. And then I got to remember we're now part of the Destination Linux network, and the saying for Destination Linux is it's a journey, not a destination. So I installed Flatpak on Slackware. It took 5 dependencies, 1 package, so 6 in total. That installed just fine. I had fun installing the packages, and Flatpak works fine. And I installed Telegram using Flatpak.
Anybody else use the application?
No, I'll be honest with you. I got real irritated, and when I couldn't find the answer to my question after several pages of searching, I said, I have other things I need to do right now.
Yeah, I got kind of like Nate. I got wore down because I spent like an entire afternoon. I mean, like afternoon till like 6 in the evening trying to install one package, and I couldn't do it. Everything was too old or need to be updated to compile this or find that, and I just gave up.
I think the other problem is, sorry, Nate. The other problem is what Pete mentioned was that I was searching through the packages, slackware.com, I think it was, but yeah, most of them were not, I think were not moved over because they were all on the 14 release. So I was looking through, it took a week. So I was looking through Slackware 64 current, and I was looking for packages on there, and I was searching, but whether the packages were not there because they hadn't moved them over, or they weren't there because they're actually not there, I don't know. Because if you find the .txz file, all you need to do is download that, install it with the package tool in the terminal, and that's done. It's a fairly simple process, but whether you can find the correct application with that extension is another thing.
So I discovered, because I was looking up Slackware, I think I was searching for it, and I found this blog post, and it's a fun read, I think, even though it does get very technical. The writer writes in a way that makes it seem like if you ever read one of those for dummies books, because I read this visual applications for dummies, and I really liked that book. It was very funny, and it had like, oh, you're gonna find this, and then you're gonna be all confused. Like it tells you a lot of things. So I'm gonna put that link in the YouTube chat, and it doesn't cover everything, but it's very interesting the way it talks about why Slackware is the way it is, because part of the reasoning is they say that if you build dependency into the system, dependency is eventually gonna break, and it's gonna be up to the user to handle everything at that point, and they're not gonna have any clue on how to do it. So if they're not gonna do it that way, they're just not gonna do it at all, because it's gonna be like waiting to happen when it breaks down the dependency resolution.
I don't know that
and one more thing. So I was gonna say, and supposedly one of the benefits of Slackware is that everything is like built in almost, like the packages. The way like Debian does it, or some other distro do it. There's like the normal package, and then there's a development package. So you can have the package itself, but you might need the development package counterpart in order to build more software. Well, Slackware just has one package installed already. So it's supposed to be simpler to install something that's not built into Slackware that way. Plus, since you have everything built in, you shouldn't need too many dependencies to build anything that's not within the repos.
It's an interesting supposition for sure, but I think that, and I think that was probably once a true statement about the dependencies breaking, but I don't know that that is universally true anymore. I guess maybe I don't understand what I need to read the article fully, but on a system breaking, I mean, what does he mean by that? Like an unusable system, or just you have a hiccup?
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like,
I think it's an ideology thing, and it's just that before systems did not have any dependency resolution, and it was up to the user. And then I guess they don't feel that it can be done correctly forever. Like it reaches a point where it just tips over, and you will have dependency hell.
I feel like you get that with Slackware. I think that it breaks and you trip over yourself just trying to install software. So it seems like it's, I guess, all right, let's say like, using a regular package manager with a repository of packages, a repository of, of software. You install something, you're going to have some things maybe it's possible for some dependencies not to be met. But so you're looking at maybe like let's say 1 out of every 100 times you install something, you have a problem. Let's just say, I'm going to throw it out there. Now with this, 100 out of 100 projects, you're going to have an issue. Or packages, you're going to have an issue because you have to go through and manually resolve everything. I would rather manually resolve something once in a while as opposed to manually resolve everything every time. Something that Anna Rita said, that if you spent all day just trying to install one piece of software, no thank you. And I have to agree with her because am I working for my computer? Is my computer working for me? At what point does it become too burdensome to continue to utilize it just to get a thing done? Everyone has a different line as to what they're willing to tolerate. I mean, a lot of people use Arch, so obviously some people can tolerate a lot of trouble, no offense, Vince, from their computers, I'm sure. And I saw Das Geek is in there. He likes his Arch too. But it's like, how much pain are you willing to endure to use a tool? That's the question that I think needs to be answered there.
I think it makes us appreciate all the other distros that we have that do a lot of that dirty work under the hood for us. And I think Slackware opens our eyes up to what it's really like without all those extra features that do that for us.
Right, Dan.
What was it? Somebody who once said on this all the time, Dave, it's supposed to hurt. Linux is supposed to hurt a little. And I thought about that a lot while trying to use Slackware.
Did you bleed at all?
No, I got a concussion.
Yeah.
When I think about Linux, Linux on the desktop in particular, one of the greatest advantages is the availability of software and the fact that there are these repositories, software centers, and basically aggregated, collections of all of this software, and the fact that it's so easy to access and use. Right? I mean, that to me is one of the reasons that has kept me on Linux consistently. I went through the pain of installing Windows a couple years ago just to try it and getting all of the, download exe files and all the installers. And God, it's such a pain to do. And Linux makes that so easy. And so something like this, to me, just kind of seems weird. It seems like an odd choice to want to run your system this way. And I'm sure there are a few good reasons for it, and none of them apply to me. So
me neither.
Yeah, here's your Photoshop, but you got to compile it before you can use it in Windows.
What do you say, Eris?
So I was going to say, OTV actually talked about that, about how people say you can't get anything done in Slackware. And he says that he is able to fully customize his own install of Slackware and have it up and running within like an hour and 15 minutes. So he talked about it in his second video, which I'll post the link. And There's also I think an ideology about Slackware. Like if you ever notice how when you open your terminal, it has like all your customizations included, like the way it looks, like the colors and all these things. And then you drop down to a TTY, right? And it's none of that is there anymore. And you're like, why does it look the same? So I think in that the blog post that I posted earlier, the author said that Slackware doesn't hide the ugliness that's within Linux, that thing is not accounted for. It exposes you to it so you are aware of what's actually happening.
Alice, that is true because one thing I did first was change my PS1.
Your what?
My PS1, it's the variable used for how your terminal precursor looks like. Your name, where you are,
Oh, okay.
what directory you're in. It's under a variable called PS1, and I changed that immediately.
Yeah, the bash, whatever default bash,
bash
is less than beautiful. Dan, what do you got, man?
I wanted to ask Eris, because I watched before the show, the second video that he's talking about. He brings up that there's in the system in Etsy Slackware, there's a Slack package plus config file. Did you get that part?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
You go into the root of the system and you go to Etsy Slackware Slack package plus .config, where you select your mirrors to get your off mirrors.
Oh, I think he's referring to there's a third-party repo that has a lot of packages within it. They're binary.
I don't have that file in my copy.
No, you will not have it because it's a third-party repo. So you will have to include it yourself. Anything
no wonder I'm making so many mistakes.
And it's actually interesting because I didn't know that you can install more packages within that's already there, because there's actually an extras repo. And when I built and installed the Mate desktop, it tells me that I must install bash completion because bash completion is not installed by default. So you can go into the package manager, the built-in Slackware package manager, and it does have other packages in there. I didn't know they were included.
Okay, one other short thing. How many people notice the little penguins that pop up when you start up Slackware at the top of the screen? Do you guys know what that means? The number of penguins represents the threads in your CPU.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Raspberry Pi shows that in Raspberry Pi logos.
Well, I don't have a Pi, so I'm left.
You need to get a Pi. Not that expensive. It'll be the best $35. Well,
what would I do
be the best
with it? I
$100.
got these laptops laying around here.
Some pretty harsh peer pressure there.
I'm telling you,
expensive.
He doesn't want to be a Pa. He doesn't want to be a Pa.
I'm telling you, it is one of the. It's such a fun. Get the Pi 100. If you can get them, they're usually sold out. It's a great toy to play with. I'm really supposed to let my kids use it more, but I don't. Vince.
I love Chicken Run. That's a great movie, Colin. Love it. I just wanted to maybe sum up my thoughts about package management in Slackware. It feels like if you really want to be somebody who wants to learn how to manage the packages, how to manage dependencies, then this is the distro for you, because there are differing levels of the package management depending on what you want to do. So, you can use the built-in package manager where you pretty much have to install everything yourself, install all the dependencies yourself. You can then go onto Slack builds, which is like the semi-official third-party repo to get extra packages that aren't in Slackware's own repos. And for Slack builds, there's another tool called SBO PKG, which allows you to browse all the packages in Slack builds, but it still doesn't do dependency resolution. And then, as we've spoken about, you can also then get these other tools like SlapGet or SLPKG to allow for dependency resolution if you don't want to go through all that hassle. So it feels to me it's providing you that choice. And I'm with sort of most people here in that I don't want to do all that dependency management. And so my focus, I didn't have much time yesterday to play with it, but my focus yesterday was to get Flatpak installed. Once I got Flatpak installed, I was like, done. I'm out of here.
Now, do you think that if Slackware had Flatpak set up by default, do you think that would change the user experience dramatically?
It would, but it would also lose a little bit of what Slackware is, if you know what I mean. It looks like it's there to not do very much with upstream packages. It's just there for you to have a base system and install whatever you like.
Can I ask the question? So when I think of like Ubuntu is a huge upstream factor for many distributions, right? There are so many distributions based on it. Then Debian, the major distributions, Arch, tend to have these derivative or other distributions are built upon them. Is there anything like that with Slackware? I mean, Slackware is just a thing. Like, there's nobody.
There are derivatives.
Are there really?
Yes. Zenwalk. I gotta research them up, but there's like at least 3.
And so, do they do what we're talking about? Do they then basically, like an Arch derivative might do, where they make it an easy installer and then give you some tools to manage the system that Arch doesn't do? Is that what these derivatives do?
I don't have no idea about what the actual
just
derivatives do, but there are at least 3, I think, 3 derivatives of Slackware. If you look at that the sticker pack that I have on Telegram,
right?
I purposely organized it by distribution. So it starts off with FLS or LFS, Linux from scratch. Then it goes Slackware, and then it shows the derivatives that I know exist.
Okay. I mean, my point being that I guess if there isn't, what is the purpose of using it in the way that it's being provided to you? I mean, I get that there are different levels and you can kind of customize it and this and that. What is the advantage that I would have in running a system this way, other than just being so utterly in control of everything that's on my system? Is that the true singular advantage to running a system this way? I guess that's what I'm asking. Like, why would you do this? There's immutable systems that might be good for a certain purpose, and then there's different types of distributions that focus on different aspects of what is the purpose I guess of Slackware?
It's like an old car, like a 60s Cadillac. It's there's not many of them left around, but there's a few hanging there for people who want to drive one.
Yeah, because you like to be stuck in the 90s.
Now, did anybody try an app image in this?
So Dan Simmons says some people like control. Okay, that's a good question. That's a good way to say that. Some people. Do we have an idea? Anyone have any idea of like what we're talking about here? Because I'm just saying, if I guess if Old Tech Bloke can run a system this way, then obviously it works for him.
So Old Tech Bloke says that he has it in several systems, several installs, and he uses all the time. I think Slackware is kind of like a time capsule. If you want to see what a system was 30 years ago or 30 odd years ago, that might be a way you can experience it today by installing Slackware. Now, another thing about Slackware is if you manage to use Slackware like as your main distro, you will be forced to learn a lot of things that you will never learn with the other Linux systems. And since everything's vanilla as much as possible, there's always the theory that since everything's vanilla, then that the distro itself will not introduce other problems that come with all the customizations that every distro has to do. Like, just like if you just think about updating Grub and about how, like, I think OpenSUSE has update bootloader and Debian has update Grub. Those are non-standard commands for Grub. And you will have to learn the actual command, which is make config or something, and then that will supposedly introduce less bugs because you're using everything from upstream and vanilla.
Okay, this is, I mean, it's a lot of theory craft, right? So Dan saying, it doesn't try to be for everyone. I get that. No, nothing does. It's impossible. My question, and I feel like it's a legitimate question, who runs this and for what purpose?
Probably some developers do, down low-level developers that build, things like Debian and SUSE. These guys that start from the ground up, they probably know a lot about Slackware because it's a teaching bed.
I think actually a little different than that. I think, let's say you're building specific hardware and you need to run a very basic operating system on, let's say, on like a RISC-V chip, or maybe some new ARM chips or whatever. You have to start from somewhere. And I think that, if not Linux from scratch, Slackware might be a good place to build for specific pieces of hardware where you don't want all the extra stuff in there to potentially cause misreadings or whatever if you're doing some real low level hardware stuff. Perhaps. I don't know. I'm not saying
That's a legitimate.
Well, it comes with a kernel called the huge kernel, and everything is in it.
And I think that also
my test laptop, everything on it works. The wireless, the keys for the multimedia, the speakers, the whole thing.
And if you check out DJ Ware's channel, he does a benchmark, and Slackware is not the worst distro. He compares Slackware, Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, and I forgot what else. But he compares them, and then he ranks them according to how many did the number one got number ones in each category, and the one that got the last place. And Slackware is neither the worst or probably not the best, but it's not definitely not the worst. And
do you have a link to that video?
Okay, I'll search for it.
Okay, cool. But it's interesting though, like on what is, I'd like to see what his metrics were, like what his criteria was for what made Slackware, better or worse than something else.
He used several benchmarks.
Oh, it's interesting. Mitchell Valentino says Slackware receives more funding on Patreon than any other distro, even Linux Mint. It has very passionate user base. They just hang out on the Linux questions forum and mind their own business. I mean, that's fair. That's cool that it's
I really, to be clear, I'm not trying to say that I don't see, that I don't get why you might want to do this. I'm just trying to say, is in the real world of, like, we've got all the people here, and I get that we're not like the most hardcore, Linux people in the world, but we all use it day in and day out, and many of us have for a very long time. And it doesn't sound like any of us have taken a look at Slackware and said, yes, this is something that makes sense to me to use on a day-to-day basis. And that's my only question, is like, who does look at that and say, this is how I want to run my system? I get your point, Nate, about maybe this is a, like a kiosk or some sort of specialized hardware.
Yeah.
And I see value there. I also see maybe like it's a snapshot in time. You build this system with this set of hardware, you can, build your Slackware system, unplug it from the network, and it'll run forever, theoretically.
I'd have to think also that maybe if you've got some young people who aspire to be a developer, could run Slackware to get to know how systems work. So
right.
I could see it being a great platform for that. And then people can mess around with it, get to know how things work. And that would set them on a path to the knowledge that they need to be a developer and get to know how systems work. And that's everything that Aris has said could probably be a good platform for that. That could be another reason.
Yeah, it's a great teacher to teach how dependencies work with stuff within the system.
The Wikipedia says Slackware aims to design stability and simplicity and to be the most Unix-like Linux distribution. Not that Wikipedia is like the ultimate source of all truth, despite what maybe some college students think. But it says it makes as few modifications as possible to software packages from upstream and tries not to anticipate use cases or preclude user decisions. So they have like a very standoffish take on a lot of things that other distributions tend to be more opinionated about. I think another point too is it's one of those legendary oldest running distributions, and I think your question is valid, Eric. Like, who would like pick this up brand new outside of those rare cases that someone wants to learn or do some rare edge case uses for Slackware? I think it's part of those who kind of like it was their first run at Linux. A lot of quote unquote neckbeards might use it, and this kind of might be indicative why in 2018 they had some financial issues. I know they might be doing better now, but in 2018 they had some financial issues due to some bad management and business decisions, I guess you can say. And when you're going on this long and you don't have that much support because the circle of interest is probably shrinking, I think it's a valid question. I don't think there's a new pipeline of users coming into this. I think it's just people who are hanging on, and it's slowly going down little by little, aside from those edge cases, like I said.
So another use case for Slackware is if you want to make a server. The 14.0 version has not gone end of life, and that came out more than 10 years ago. So maybe the current 15 version might make 12, 13 years, and you will not have to upgrade for 12 and 13 years. You would have support all that time.
There you go.
So a good question. So Mitchell says, and I've heard it in different ways. The old adage, run Debian and you understand Debian, run Arch and you understand Arch. Although I've often heard, install Debian the real way or install Arch the real way. You'll learn Linux. But if you learn Slackware, you understand Linux, and I never understood those. How does it make me, outside of learning commands, how does that make me learn Linux?
I think that dovetails into a previous statement, how you get to see how ugly Linux is when you don't have all these little helper applications, and then you understand how ugly Linux really is.
Mm-hmm. How beautiful it is.
Or how beautiful.
Yeah. And I guess too, that has to be something that you aspire to want. Frankly, I had my face in a server rack for, a couple decades, and that's good enough for me. I'm happy to be blissfully ignorant and just use a system and not have to know every single tiny little infinitesimal detail about it. That sounds unpleasant to me at this point in my life.
Who gives 10 years of support without being an enterprise agreement?
Slackware.
Bingo. That might be the reason. That might be the reason.
Ubuntu gives you 10 years now, but you have to make an account, a free account as a home user.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to do something. Slackware, just bang, it's there. Here you go.
So I'm going to post a link. I'm going to post a link to Patreon for Slackware in case you're interested. And it seems like they make a decent amount.
Yeah, I think after that 2018 incident, people were like, no, we love this thing too much. It's too legendary. Nostalgia kicked in, and a lot of people forked over a lot of funds.
I remember that.
And I'm going to say this just one more time, and I don't want to come off as sounding defensive, because I'm really not trying to be aggressive towards anyone who loves Slackware and thinks I'm being dense. I'm just telling you that, from my perspective, I see this as being, it's the same thing as maybe driving an old car that you need the wrench on, and some guys just really love that. They want to know how their engine works and every little single detail. And I get that that's your thing and that's what you want to do. And, the rest of us who just want to get in the car and go somewhere and not even think about the fact that we're, there's a combustion chamber and blah, blah, blah. Like, we don't need to know any of that. Like, just get me somewhere. And that's kind of my view of this is just, it's like, this seems unnecessarily difficult, but that's my perspective. So
I can think of a few people who have like an older car that requires, special kind of work, and it's a pain.
That's a good analogy.
It's a pain to do sometimes. You have to take a lot more effort to make sure you get the right parts. You spend a little extra money for the right parts, and then it still doesn't run, and then you still work on it, even though I don't know. I'm not speaking from experience, I guess. Maybe. So I guess, yeah, maybe it is that classic car analogy, but
older cars are much easier to work on. You need less tools, especially if you go back into the 70s or 60s.
Sure, but parts
you don't need these Torx wrenches and hex wrenches and special wrench for this and an extra special wrench for that.
Eris.
So going by this car analogy, you could say that Arch is like you buy a kit car You build it yourself. It comes with instructions on how to build everything. Slackware is like you get the parts. You don't get the instructions. Might get like a little pamphlet, but you gotta go and know everything how to build it. Then Gen 2 is you make your own parts.
No,
right?
Gen 2 is
But-
you gotta
but-
like find the raw materials and distill the bare metals into a factory, and then
So Gen 2 is like you have your own printer, your own parts printer, and you make your own parts with instructions included. And then LFS is you make your own parts, nothing else included.
So
Yeah, but-
Slackware is the IKEA of Linux. Is that what you're saying?
The IKEA Linux.
a really old IKEA.
Comes
Maybe.
with stuff, you put it together, and the instructions are very hard to follow.
It's
It's an
Slackware, not
erector set.
Slackerware.
That's yeah. I think that's a good point. I really do think that I can see some specific cases for like using I'm distracted. I'm hearing some sounds here. I'm not sure what it is. Like, is it slurping? I don't know. I think I do see like a case where you could use Slackware for educational and developmental purposes. I do see that case there. Although I don't know what architectures all that Slackware supports, if that even matters if you're using it anyway. I mean, it could be, you might be able to just compile it, whatever.
But I think to Eric's
architecture.
point though is like that we can think of that, but in practicality, if you have to sample schools across the country, how many of them think Slackware? So we can think of a reason why it could be, but like in reality, how many people actually do it? That, of course, who knows who can answer that, but that's we can think of it, but what's reality people think of Slackware in the real world for education purposes?
It depends on what you're educating though. If you're educating like operating system theory or whatever, that's different than if you're educating on Python development. So those are two different areas of academics. Saying, Linux from scratch is another one that would be like that as well.
Yeah, I think people. Yeah, I just wonder if if we sampled schools across the country, how many of that list would include Slackware? But who knows? We don't know. Maybe the neckbeards who are teaching in colleges, universities are still holding on and still pushing Slackware as a test bed.
My second cousin was going into school to learn how to do Linuxy stuff and learn bash commands and all that. His instructor gave him Ubuntu to take home.
Well,
Yeah, I
it's
imagine the newer ones
better.
are
You know,
starting
and then the COVID broke out and he flushed it all down the toilet and said he didn't want nothing to do with it anymore.
It happens. Part of life.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've veered way off the beaten path in this one, so general user experience for Slackware. Does anybody want to say like what they like, just their general thought is on how their usage of it? Anything.
I had fun putting it together and watching the old Englishman explain everything. I actually stopped the screen in front of me and did everything by the letter that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And after the fourth try, I got it to, really turn out. So I got a really good rush out of that because I'm like, wow, it's working, But when I got to the point where I had to actually try and put some software in it, I got really worked over on it. But all in all, I do think it is amazing. I gave it the amazing on the vote. It is, I do feel it has its purposes. But the fact that I was actually able to build it made me happy.
So it was for you. It was like a sense of accomplishment. It was something that you were
Right.
excited that you got from nothing to something. That's fair.
It was something that we usually pick distros that are like Ubuntu, Fedora, SUSE, general ones that we put together. They go in the machine rather quick. We can throw software in them rather fast, and and that's it. Slackware, you had to put some work into it to get it to work.
Right. It was more like digesting the heartier foods, not the Twinkies.
You had to build it to get it to where you had something useful.
Yeah.
I did get app images to work on it.
Oh, that's good.
I'd like to see just some simple post-install instructions on their website would be nice. I think that would just just prop it up a little bit just to get the system going. Whether that goes against their philosophy, I don't know, but just whatever the old tech bloke was showing on his video, because I haven't watched it, how to get all those things, the updates and the mirrors and the package, the extra packages and all that. I would have thought that was something that would be available on the website itself as a post install or after install or something like that. That'd be nice to have something there.
I agree. Like, okay, you got this far. Now what? You know, even a README file, even a text file would be nice to have.
You got farther by typing Slackware in the YouTube search engine.
So I would say the Slackware, they themselves, and probably anybody who uses Slackware will tell you, it is not for everybody. But if you want to learn the way Slackware works, the way maybe Linux works underneath all the different packages that there is, it might be an option. If you think Arch is too easy and you want to go another step, it's always a possibility.
You mean Arch is easier than this?
Yes, Arch is easier.
Tell me
Oh,
that
absolutely.
I can build Arch easier than building Slackware.
Yes.
You don't have to build anything, Dan.
The thing about Arch is that there wasn't any installer. Now there is an installer. We haven't done a walkthrough about how easy the new built-in installer is. But yes, Arch will have a little details you have to do yourself, like change like the keyboard and like the repo. But yes, I think overall Arch is easier.
Probably
It's
the difference.
comforting to know.
I think the difference could be maybe that instead of configuring and building everything yourself, you're just really configuring, because all of the packages mostly are precompiled, and you're just installing, binaries and stuff like that, and it does all of the dependency resolution for you and all of that stuff, and it has the AUR, which you can build stuff, but even the the package builds have all the dependencies already built in. Yeah, Arch is way easier to use than this is. So
I was thinking Arch was at least on the same plane.
no.
So Leo
No,
says,
because sorry.
Leo says the install of Arch is a bit harder than Slackware. After that, Arch is 100 times easier than Slackware once you get it booting.
And I think that's the proof in that is that there are the specialist distributions like Endeavor and Garuda and some of those other. I always forget the
Right.
2 or 3 other ones, but
Manjaro.
those are the ones that have made it easy to install Arch.
Mhm.
Because that's always been the hurdle, right? It's not once Arch is installed that it's not necessarily that difficult. It's the getting it installed. So,
And he continues to say that the fact that Arch will handle your new kernel, add it to Grub or whatever, all automatically is a testament to that. I cannot disagree. Colin, what were you going to say before I so rudely interrupted you?
I can't remember. Oh, well, yeah, I don't know. What was I going to say? I think it was Arch is a problem to install compared to Slackware, because Slackware just takes you through a few things, installs everything, it's up and running. But yeah, once you get Arch installed, it's basically just going through the formalities of Xorg and just knowing your computer, what you've got on there. I think like your graphics card and stuff like that. Otherwise, once Arch is installed, getting packages is super duper easy, right? But with Slack, it's the opposite way around. I found it quite easy just to do all the CF disk and create your partitions and stuff, install it. But once you get past that, if you install everything, but once you get past that, I had difficulty installing packages. So that's the big difference between the two. And I think Leo's right what he's saying. Arch is a little bit harder.
I used to be afraid of the term dependency hell. I've heard that so many times, especially tied to things like Slackware and such, and it kind of makes people shy away from trying Slackware, I'm sure. But I said I've learned that all you have to do is learn which packages are required by the package you need to install and install them first. It's quite logical, Captain.
Yeah. So then since you just kind of did I feel like you did a Star Trek tie in there. Do you think the computer core on the Enterprise would be running Slackware?
If Spock had anything to do with it, yes.
Okay, that's fair. All right, any other thoughts there on Slackware to include why you think somebody should give it a spin? Let's say just highlight someone should try Slackware because. What would you say?
Because they would want to
How
learn.
long's?
Go ahead, Colin.
No, I was going to say, how long's the elevator trip?
No, I think it, because what do you normally get if someone says, "Oh, I want to learn about Linux," and then you'll hear someone say, "Oh, well, roll your own with Linux from scratch, or try Gentoo," or I think Slackware deserves to be in that conversation as well, right? If someone's learning, because we just had the adage that if you want to know how to install Linux, then or install Debian, then you install Debian. And if you want to, learn Linux, then you run Slackware. So I think we're all sort of saying the same thing, that we understand that this is the most sort of hands-on approach to running it, so that you would have no choice but to learn, right? You would just learn by going through the motions. Dan, you're saying you were, freezing the video and typing commands and things. Even going through that sort of step, that sort of process, you're going to learn some things. And so I think it makes perfect sense that if someone said, "I want to learn the ins and outs of
Stop
Linux,"
the video, take notes.
yeah, exactly. Oh, I've done
Yeah.
it. Absolutely. And that I think that would be my pitch. Okay, you want to learn Linux? Great. Try Slackware.
It's definitely an approach to learning Linux for sure.
If
Anybody
you
else
love
have-
classic cars, this is the distro for you.
You can't figure out how to put anything in the system for software, run to app images.
If you I don't know why I didn't try app images. I was banging my head against the wall with the whole Flatpak thing. Maybe if you like classic distributions, try Slackware. That might be a way to put it too.
I think this is a tough elevator pitch if it's just an average person wanting to try something. No offense against Slackware, it's got its place for sure, but it would be a tough elevator pitch for sure.
It's
Yeah.
an acquired taste.
Yeah.
Like a fine wine, it's taken 10 years to age or whatever. To this,
Yeah,
30-year-old
this is top
Scotch.
shelf. This is down in the cellar stuff from last century.
Close to 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think I would tell people if you want to see what Linux was like, setting up Linux in the 90s, this is a good way to go. A good way to see a taste of it. It wouldn't be exactly like it because a lot of the final tools are a lot different. I'm sure there's been some refinements in the installation process. I don't remember setting any Xorg settings for my horizontal and vertical refresh rates on my LCD. So things are different, but I think that it's a neat experience to go through, and it's good to struggle against something. So if you want to struggle against your operating system, definitely try Slackware. That's what I would say.
I'd just like to know that Leo and Dan are even slightly annoyed at me, then I've done my job. Because I really did love that episode. If you want to learn more about, and I'm it's not my podcast, I'm just telling you that Linux user space on this topic on Slackware is excellent, because they go through all of this and they answer a lot of the questions that we've had here. So.
And Leo and Dan run their systems for a month, don't they? I think, is that right? They run them for a month.
Yes,
Yeah.
they run them hardware for a month.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a commitment that they make.
And I think you get to know a lot more because we spend a week, but a month is a lot
We
more
had
time
2
to sort
weeks.
of
Yeah, 2
dive
weeks
into
I
on
it.
think
this one.
everybody waited
Well,
up until
yes.
the last week to cram for it.
We
No,
did
I
have 2
tried.
weeks, and I slacked off this week, so literally slacked off.
No, I think Slackware is great. I hope it continues, because I think that it's good to have there for numerous reasons. One, to see, it's like a time machine. It's good, it's nice to see where we've been, and we're always seeing where we're going. We know where we are. I kind of took a little bit from Back to the Future, so it's good to have there. It's definitely needed to continue to exist. I'm glad it's funded. It seems to be a project that is well funded now, and I'm hoping that that it continues. I'm concerned about what happens if the benevolent dictator can't do it anymore. Is there a secession plan, or is that the end of it? You know, whatever happens, happens. So I wish
Goes
them
to the
all.
Linux Hall of Fame.
It will, yes, it will forever stay in there. So it's very, very good.
I hope he has a successor for it because it is a great learning experience.
Seems like there's a lot of people who use it. So I mean, that's what I'm picking up on the chat and everything. All right. So any else? I think Peter, do you have any like a final word you want to give on Slackware?
I actually just I just had another quick thought. So we were talking about Arch being easier after the fact, and one of the virtues of Slackware being simple because it doesn't presume to enforce any sort of configurations or dependencies on you. And I think about my history of running Arch, and this isn't, I'm not trying to have an Arch diatribe here, but I've had a lot of issues where Arch has broken on me, and I know it's probably my fault because I didn't read the news, or whatever the reason might be. It seems like at times the act of updating can cause serious problems, lead to systems that won't boot and have various other ill effects. And so from that perspective, I can see how someone might look at something like Slackware and say, well, that'll never happen to me. It's impossible. That can't happen because I'm in control of it. So anyway, that it just popped into my head as we're sitting, saying Arch is so much easier. And I'm wondering if someone who's running Slackware is looking at that and saying, not really. So anyway.
Yeah, maybe. Peter, are you
I'm ready
free
now.
now?
I'm actually finding that I wish I had discovered Slackware many years ago, or at least I tried it years ago. I'm enjoying it personally. I've had no issues yet. I will continue to try. I'm gonna keep it installed, and I'm gonna keep it updated.
Did you do a kernel upgrade on it already as well?
I actually, one of the package upgrade all had a new kernel, and at the end of it, it reminded you to update your Lilo, and I used the command that the old tech bloke told us to use, and it went fine. I rebooted and went back into the distro just fine. So it's all about the learning, but you're right. It is hard to learn. All the notes are not all in one place. I did learn that myself, but for anyone who really wants to learn, it's a great distro.
All the kernels that have been handed out lately throughout all the distros are to litigate the dirty pipe vulnerability. And they're having a really bad problem with that on Google phones.
Oh, turning mine off. It's all done. Larry, you came in here like just at the end of the Slackware conversation. I don't know if you wanted to have anything, add anything about Slackware from your perspective. Well, right. So next week we are going to do a news flight. So we're going to dedicate the entire show to just different things in the news that we have been picking up that we think is interesting, that we'd like to discuss, and so just anything in the news, Linux, tech, open source related, we can use that. Tangentially, music is also highly technically focused as well. So Scrapjaw might have a thing to contribute there. I don't know. We'll find out. Gaming stuff. Adam Grubbs, I know you play a game or three, so if you want to bring up any like gaming news, more than welcome. That's the topic at the Linux Saloon next week, and we'll go from there.
My work schedule is actually going to let me be here more often now.
All right. I don't know how you pulled that off, but congratulations.
I don't either. There's so much behind it. I'll tell you after.
Okay. All right. So some housekeeping, Eric. Next week. What are we going to be doing next week?
We're going to revive the European edition. So at 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. something. It was 8 p.m. for someone in the Netherlands. So I'm not sure which time zone that would be. But so 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do a 2-hour Europe edition Linux Saloon. And hopefully we will get some folks who have a difficult time being here for the normal show because it's late over there.
All right. And the one caveat, it might get shifted a little bit to the right. if Twill goes a little bit longer, but as soon as at the wrap up of Twill this week in Linux, we'll do the Linux Saloon or Linux Pub, maybe Linux Saloon Pub, Linux European something. So that'll be next week. So if you want to join from the other side of the pond, you have a week now to know, and tell your friends, tell your European friends to be there. I'll be sure to let a few people know.
Yeah,
And
let's.
Eric
I
will
was just
take
gonna
point
try
on
to get
that
the word
one.
out. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're gonna take point on that one because
Mhm.
my schedule is sometimes a little bit dodgy in the afternoons, so
Right.
we'll go from there. So anyway, so looking forward to that. Linux Saloon European edition, eh? Wait, no, that's Canadian.
Maybe you should ask them.
Listen, Canadians are the Europeans of North America.
That's
okay?
true. You have the Quebec. I know some French Canadians. They're funny people. I like them. All right. We're going to do like, there's been a few things in the news lately. We're going to, let me back that up here a little bit. Let me reverse that train. So it's time to muddle our way through the Linux news. Big thanks for Michael of This Week in Linux for mixing up a great flight of topics. And I've gone through his notes because he shares them with me now, which is kind of fun. And I've highlighted a few things. So who here is interested in Asahi Linux? Anybody here? Is that an interest of anybody? So
What is
that
Asahi Linux?
Yeah, what is Asahi?
I am. We'll see. Vince, he put up his digital hands. That's cool.
Adam can't wait.
I'm sure he can't. It was created to make Asahi Linux project was created to make it possible to run Linux on Apple Silicon, so like the Apple M1s. This week they announced their first official alpha release. Now it's only intended for developers and power users, but with the alpha release, Asahi Linux Alpha can be easily deployed on Apple Arch 64 hardware via a simple terminal command when running Mac OS 12.3 and newer. So it'll work across the M1, M1 Pro, M1 Max hardware, except for the recently introduced Mac Studio. It allows for complete Asahi Linux desktop installation, a minimal install based on Arch Linux for ARM or UEFI environment only. It also works with dual boot support to Mac OS, so you can continue to use it, use the Mac OS portion of it if desired. The initial Asahi Linux alpha release has been tested to verify working Wi-Fi, USB, NVMe, display functionality, Ethernet, and other basic things. Now it's just an alpha release, so it's not intended for everyone, but it's awesome news because support for Linux on this hardware is very important for continued growth of Linux operating system. And I do have I'll put a couple of links. Oops, wrong one. I'll put a couple of links in the YouTube chat for those interested. So the question is that I would have for you, the class, is how critical do you think the M1 hardware is? Do you think this is? I mean, I don't see. It's not like Apple is going to make it easy for Linux to run on their hardware. So do you feel like maybe it's a bit of an uphill battle, or maybe somewhat of a wasted effort, or do you think this is a absolutely vital effort that's being put in there, and why? So Vince, you shook your head. What?
I don't think there's much doubt. I don't think there's much doubt that the Apple Silicon M1 chips are a game changer, particularly in how well they perform, how they're designed, especially with performance per watt. You can't get close with anything else out there. And there was even some benchmarks that were put out. I don't know exactly how true they are. They seemed okay, of that new M1 Ultra chip being almost as fast as a third gen Threadripper, which is mind blowing. That I saw that and my mind just went. So there are going to be some people who will probably always have the same sort of negative feelings towards Apple, but like you said, Nate, the hardware's there. Having the option to run Linux on it is important. And you mentioned that Apple are sort of not going to help out with putting Linux on there. They're not sort of stopping people putting Linux on there either, because they're making it able to be booted from there. I saw, because I've been following this project a little bit. I'm not super close to it, but I sort of follow his tweets and stuff. Marcan Hector, his name is, on Twitter. He the other day he posted a video of his M1 Mac booting into Linux, and it was really funny because when he turns it on, there's a little Apple logo, and then it almost immediately switches to the Asahi Linux, and then Calamari shows up, and it was just so funny to see. But I feel that having the option there for people who run Macs is very, very important, and I think that the project has hit this really important milestone on its way. There's still a lot of work to be done, and they admit that, but it is a very important milestone in the project.
Well, Dan Simmons says in the chat that Apple's been throwing some bones toward Asahi Linux. So I don't know how big those bones are, or if they're they're just the little bones that you choke on. I'm not sure which, but it's interesting to see that.
If you think back also, way back when the M1 chips actually launched, in their presentation, they actually showed Ubuntu running on these Macs. So it's not like Apple don't recognize the fact that Linux is out there and that it might actually be the favored operating system for developers.
Now, what are you gonna say, Scrapjaw? Before I so rudely cut you off.
Oh, I just wondered, like, how mainstream are these? Because that's the other factor. These chips, is that their new thing?
Yeah, it's where Apple is going forward. So all future hardware that they put out is going to have the M1 or this platform. They've replaced the x86 chips based on it. And I was going to say, well, go ahead.
I said that's kind of cool. And also, like, that is that Hector Martin that you were referring to?
That's it. That's him.
Yeah, he's the guy that if it's got a chip in it, he's putting Linux on it. If it's a handheld game system or whatever, I remember him as far back as the PS3 and putting Linux on that. So
that's cool.
If it runs anything close to something that resembles what can run Linux in any other realm, we're gonna have it on there. That's so.
The other thing I found amazing with what he's been doing is all the developments being out in the open. I mean, he streams hours and hours and hours of development on YouTube. And I've occasionally, when I've had nothing else to do, clicked on his link because I saw his live. I have no idea what he's doing, but he's just busy coding away, and it's all on this Asahi. He does these mega long 8-hour, 10-hour streams just coding. It's incredible.
It's like being on the Nebuchadnezzar in the Matrix watching tank work. It's like, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Now, I saw this. I can't verify, but John Anderson says that last time he checked, Apple has over 50% of the greater than $1,000 laptop market. I don't know if that's true. Seems like I've never seen Apple in any CAD settings or design settings like that. Mechanical, maybe graphic design. I don't know. I'm not sure on that. I can't verify that. I don't have any documentation to say that's true or not. But that's if that's true, then I would say yes, it's very important that Linux works on the M1.
I was thinking the same thing. Is that when you talk about Apple, you're talking about laptops that are over $1,000 typically. But then I did look it up. M1 chips are they're what, about 18 months old, and they are in the Mac Minis, and Mac Minis are around $600.
Yeah, I was going to say the Intel has started putting out some asymmetric CPUs, and I think they're starting with their desktop line right now. But they have like similar to what ARM does. They have like a smaller or slower, but like I think I would say like the instruction sets are trimmed down a little bit, CPU cores. Then they have their the regular, big time.
They have main cores and efficiency cores.
Right. So what I'm curious about is, I wonder if that energy gap that ARM has had over the x86 line is going to start shrinking as this progresses. Like this is a pretty, I would say substantial innovation by Intel on this. I mean they're breaking the norm. So I wonder if maybe that performance and power gap is going to be closed up quite a bit, and by how much?
I think it will. Yeah. That's what I mean. That's the whether you are going to buy a Mac or not, it changes the state of the art, right? So we look at this new low power, high performance multifaceted chipset that Apple's been able to get out there and do in a real way that maybe a lot of hardware or a lot of companies can't do because they don't control both sides of the equation. But this is their game now because they were able to pull that off. It won't be their game forever. The other manufacturers are going to catch up. But that's this prods them. This makes them move. It's like how AMD was terrible for so long until Intel pushed them to be better. They had to be better, and so they did get better, and then they were better, and then Intel's behind them now. So it's just sort of it is that sort of game always.
Mm-hmm. I think competition is great for everybody. I think the consumer actually it keeps these companies from getting complacent and resting on their laurels. So I think that this kind of competition is great for everybody. So I think as a whole, from a as a technologist, a nerd, I love seeing the M1 really kind of stick it to AMD and Intel. Yeah, on challenging them on how they've been building CPUs. I think it's great for that. I don't know what it's gonna look like 10 years from now, but 10 years ago we got the whole iCore series, so we started down that path.
From a use case standpoint, and especially from a mobile technology standpoint, they've solved so many problems, right? With its heat, energy usage, performance, size, right? All of these things they've managed to seemingly conquer, right? I mean, I think that's what surprises me most of all is that often in the technology realm, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and you'll see like there's a 15% improvement, or it's really not as big a deal as the marketing team wants you to think it is. But to me, when I look at this is actually transformational. Like it is actually that much better. Like Vince was saying, if the benchmarks are to be believed, it truly is that much better and that much different than what's available from the competition.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing what this does to the industry for sure. Did anybody else have anything they want to say about the M1, or have we beat that horse?
So I think if you decide that you're gonna buy a new MacBook with the Apple Silicon, I would recommend that you pick a distro and stick to it, because if you wear out that hard drive, you won't be able to easily exchange that.
Oh, do tell.
It's not serviceable in any way. I think the new Apple Silicons.
So you can't change out the NVMe once it wears out.
No, the chips are right on the motherboard.
No, I'm talking about the hard drive. You can't go in there and change out the hard drive.
You can't.
The SSD.
I guess MX Linux is going to win that battle because you can run it right from the USB. There you go.
Well, that sounds like a garbage hardware as far as I'm concerned.
Just some of that black box stuff that we don't like, isn't it?
No, I won't. I wouldn't touch that. You'd have to pay me to take that, so I wouldn't. It'd sit on my shelf. Okay, that's awesome. That's, I guess, Apple's. All right. Okay. Yeah, that'll bring out my distaste for Apple real quick when you talk about stuff like that. Okay, now this is some news on Steam, because we seem to always talk about Steam whenever there's news.
Yay!
So Steam is coming to Chrome OS. Have you heard, Adam?
Yay!
Have you heard? So this week at their Game Development Summit keynote, Google formally announced that Valve's Steam gaming client is coming to Chrome OS. I guess it's in alpha now. I don't know. It's initially targeting their higher-end Chromebooks, which makes sense considering the requirements for running modern games in comparison to the specs of entry-level Chromebooks would be, not so good. So you have to. Although a lot of the games I play, not so much. Steam on Chrome OS is also limited to the Intel AMD x86-64 Chromebooks and not ARM. Steam will run inside Google's special Borealis Linux container. And there's a lot of information out there as well concerning that. Let's see. Apparently, the Google Stadia and Wine, the Stadia porting toolkit uses the DXVK to translate direct 3D to Vulkan. And there's already Wine and Proton, which is mentioned in the talk. It seems Google wanted something different. So why? One major reason is that Stadia is pretty stripped down version of Linux, so it doesn't have anything Wine needs to build. There's also a lot of things they don't have to care about that normal desktops do. 90% of Wine is simply not needed, they said. If would this be if Chrome OS, would that be considered? Is Chrome OS considered Linux? Do we consider Chrome OS Linux? I don't know. Some people say yes, some people say no. I would say yes, but I could be wrong. I
Yes,
see.
not
Yes.
GNU/Linux though.
It's not GNU/Linux. It's just Linux.
No, it's just Linux.
Why?
It's custom Linux built for their hardware.
Isn't it Gentoo based, sort of like built kind of like Gentoo, or built off
Yeah.
Gentoo, or was it once built off Gentoo?
It's Gentoo with a twist.
I got a little confused there. Are we talking about running Steam games in Chrome OS, not
Yes.
Stadia, right?
Right.
Are there Chromebooks with dedicated GPUs in them? I'm not sure.
I'm not
Google
sure.
announced that SteamOS will come to the higher end Chromebooks. So yeah, we need some kind of GPU or something.
So Leo says that Chrome OS is Gentoo, so then I guess it is Linux. Of course, it's Linux. You can do the Chroot thing and run a whole other operating system on top of it. Well, it's interesting. So that would mean that when Steam does their surveys, if a lot of people using Chrome OS is running it, because even if you have a let's say a lower end Chrome machine, if you're not doing AAA gaming, I would think it'd be a fine platform. I mean, someone tell me I'm wrong. Someone tell me I'm wrong.
Never tried Chrome OS. Does it run on other computers or PCs besides
Yeah, I don't know why.
the Chrome?
I'm not sure why you'd want to
You
run
need
it,
that.
but yeah.
You need that Chrome Flex, Chrome OS Flex, and that's
Oh, the Flex. Yes.
that's like I don't even think it's beta. I don't know what it is. It's like a preview, and then they're still developing it, and then eventually it will come out in the stable build. But you can
That's a,
you can download it and install on your laptop or your computers if you want.
that's the one Shickle's running, right? I think he's trying that out.
I don't know if he's trying it out, but
I'm pretty sure he was.
I think I
actually.
seen him on Telegram. He said something about it.
So Leo shared a link, sort of. Chrome Enterprise.google.os Chrome. Wait, maybe I didn't have to share that. Oh, you said that was for you, Eris. That wasn't for me.
yeah.
Sorry,
So-
my bad.
As an owner of I hope everybody can hear me.
Yep, I can hear
As
you.
an owner of a higher end Chromebook, yeah, I'm not particularly enthusiastic about this whole thing. It's it kind of struggles sometimes, show the Reddit page. Admittedly, Reddit is pretty heavy these days, but you'd have to have some pretty serious stuff in a Chromebook, and there are higher end ones with like 11th gen CPUs and such, but most of the power delivery in the Chromebook is not really designed for this kind of thing. They would have to bring out new models specifically with gaming in mind, because as I understand currently, there are no real Chromebooks that are valid gaming machines. I mean, small indie games maybe, at lower resolutions, those kind of things, but even like a mid-tier or high-tier indie game, and definitely not AAA stuff, is it's just not going to run well on Chromebooks. And they're talking about running it in their Borealis container. It's not the same Linux container that they use for the Linux beta thing, I don't think. I think it's a different container, but there's a lot to be seen from that. I don't think that it's necessarily it's not going to be the same translation as like starting up Steam on Ubuntu or whatever and going about your business. The hardware is different, the underlying technology is different. Saying it's based on Gentoo is so disingenuous to what it actually is. Like it's kind of grasping at straws for some sort of association that isn't meaningfully there. And so like Chrome OS behaves differently, their compositor behaves differently, their input behaves differently. It's really hard to just say that, oh well, this is just Linux, it's going to run the same. It's not, and I'll be interested to see where they go with that. Them deciding to cut out most of the Wine libraries is a very smart move, because Wine is a big project and most of that doesn't have anything to do with gaming. But
They're going to try and mimic the Steam Deck and put it in a Chromebook.
Adam, do you think
so are they
do you think
running
this is why?
Steam OS in the container? Because that
I don't
Well,
doesn't
they're going to
make
try and mimic it.
Well, no, like
You'd have to have something like a gaming Chromebook.
yeah, but that's
made
not
for
that's not
gaming.
exactly so. That's not really what the Steam Deck is about. Steam Deck's more about having a single hardware platform to target for developers, but this is more like bringing the equivalent of what you see on desktop Windows, Mac, and Linux and Steam to Chrome OS officially, rather than through a chroot or through some hackery in their existing containers. And it's not the same. It might transparently, when they finally get it working, it might transparently feel the same, but the technology going into this is nowhere near what Windows, Mac, or Linux does for Steam. I'm hopeful for it, but again, you really have to have some Chrome OS focused, gaming machines, and
Well, and
that's to be.
and
We'll see.
it begs the question. I mean, was there a clamor for this? I mean, or we.
I could personally, I could see that. I mean, there's an entire generation of kids right now that are growing up with Chrome OS, and they're already used to it. They're used to, they might have a console for gaming or something, but if you can offer them the familiarity with what they're growing up with, as well as the gaming that they want, this seems like a good move. It's exactly what
point,
Microsoft did in the 90s.
But to your point, it's going to require much better hardware than exists currently. So it's not like
no,
these
it's going
kids
to require better hardware in the Chrome space than exists currently in the Chrome space.
But do you think this is why Chrome Flex came along? Chrome OS Flex?
No, I think that's a whole nother push.
Right.
But yeah, this will basically provide a way for Google to have inroads into local PC gaming, which is as far as like PC sales go, gaming PCs are probably the most sold right now, barring the enterprise, stuff, of course. But like for consumers and such, gaming PCs are king. And if you can get into that market, that's key. Now, Stadia obviously was their original push for that, but that's been here and there, right? It's slowly growing, but not as much as they'd like. So this would be a way of leveraging technology that already exists. The Valve Steam platform already exists. The Proton layer already exists. All these other things work already. And it's just a matter of marrying that to their platform and then doing deals with manufacturers for making gaming class machines with Chrome OS installed. That's the main push. If you can get, it's like, hey, while you're playing your games on here, go browse on Chrome with all the ads and all of the googly goodness that we give you, and it's no different than what Microsoft did in the 90s, really.
Adam, would you be willing to buy a $2,000 plus Chromebook to play games?
Sure. Yeah. I'd much rather spend that on a lot of machines, actually. Windows 11 is an absolute dumpster fire. Mac OS's software quality is declining in every release. Yeah, I'd take Chrome OS.
I mean, if they can get the only thing we're talking about was mobile hardware. We went from talking about the M1s now this Chromebook thing. I'm looking at a Razer laptop. This is probably the closest thing to a what I used to think a Mac Pro was capable of, being thin and light and powerful. And if I'm going to pay for that $1,600 or close to $2,000, this is kind of that where you're going to be anyway. So it's, I don't know. I can see where maybe down the road, this being the inroad to getting into the gaming and the advertising and all of those things. I could see the seeds for that, but I don't know if I don't think the market is there right this moment for what they're trying to do, because with gaming too, you need access to the bottom layer in the hardware. And if they're trying to containerize a whole lot of stuff, though, containers come a long way, right? So that's the other thing of, so I remember putting a chroot on a Droid years ago and putting a Linux Ubuntu on it. It was trash. Like, you had to VNC into itself with a separate app. Like, it was weird. We're not there anymore, but I know where I kind of see where the pitfalls can be in this whole stack mess. So, yeah.
I'm finding more and more that hardware these days is so homogeneous and in the way that it works. You know, we talk about the new moves that Intel and Apple have done with their hardware and such, and those are important. I think performance per watt is going to be the most important thing going forward, especially with environmental issues. But that being said, the hardware is, you know, you can buy from HP, Dell, whoever, you know, and they're all basically the same machine with slightly a little different. Oh, this one's got slightly better webcam, or this one has 2 mics instead of 1. You know, it's like it's not that much of a difference, right? But the software is really where people interact with, right? They interact with the software all the time, and you know, things like Windows 11 is, boy, if yeah, I could go on, but anyway, Windows 11 is really awful of a user experience because they cram it so full of stuff that people don't want. And Mac OS software quality is declined every release, I think. And you know, when it comes to Chrome OS, I have a Chromebook, mind you, a better Chromebook than most people, but it's a spectacular interface. It's a wonderful thing to use. I enjoy using the Chromebook when I use it. It's awesome. And that's kind of what I think is for me, and I feel like a lot of people these days probably feel that the software experience is way more important than the hardware, because the hardware is often all the same. So if I can get something that's minimal, out of my way, and lets me focus on what I'm doing, like Chrome OS certainly does, and I can also play games on it, yeah, why not, right? That's a great combination.
Yeah,
But
if they can get past the power consumption hurdle, that was the point I was almost going to get to, and you hit right on it. Was like, even though this laptop is light and I can go anywhere with it, and it's powerful, and it's all, you know, probably 30% faster than the tower that's been sitting in the hallway for a while now, but I can't unplug it and go do things. That's the big thing, is if we can get this power consumption with the mobile and having the ability to play at 144 hertz, or do your CAD stuff and whatever, or go to a rehearsal, because that's a lot of things when you're talking about $2,000 laptops, whether it's the Mac Apple universe or if it's Chrome. There's a lot of stuff out there that runs. If you go to any professional audio, anything where there's professional audio and video, or like kind of Nate, you do your Christmas stuff, right? And all that MIDI controlled and automated things. Deadmau5 runs all of his stuff off of 1, maybe 2 laptops. You know, there's redundancy, obviously, but really a lot of that stuff has to be plugged in. Well, you know, even though you're running maybe an hour and a half, 2-hour show, imagine if I wanted to go to rehearsal and do 45 minutes and I ran all my stuff through a laptop. It'd be amazing if you could do that without having to plug into a wall socket somewhere, you know, or busking or something like that.
Yeah, that being said, I don't bring my power adapter to work with my Mac, actually. I just bring it to work and work all day and then go home. It's nice not having to worry about the power thing, but I'm in the process of updating so I can try out Asahi, because I'm really getting tired of Mac OS. So I'll let you guys know how that goes, by the way.
Cool. Yeah, that's some good points there. And actually, when I take my laptop places, my HP EliteBook, I don't take my power adapter either. I just use it all day and I bring it home and I charge it. So that's pretty nice. So I understand. I understand the joy of that. That was a new experience for me. All right, so we are at time when we have to, you know, closing time. You have to go home, but you can't stay here. You know, that whole thing. I want to just plug out. Rick isn't here tonight, but I'm assuming he's doing it again this Wednesday. But he has a Wednesday night stream where he does something, you know, installs something or works on something on his channel. If you want to check out Rick, Mark, you have the Atlanta Linux Users Group. Are you meeting tomorrow?
Yes, every Sunday, 3 to 6 U.S. Eastern. And you can find out more information about that at ale.org, ale.org. And it's basically you just bring your issue that you want to discuss, and we try to help you out. solve a problem with Linux or open source software.
Do you have any Slackware users in your group?
I'm sure we do, but that distribution doesn't come up very often. In fact, I don't think that. I know I have in the past talked about my 1995 CD that I have, but I don't recall what the discussion was beyond that.
That's awesome. All right, well, cool. Maybe someone should drop on by and ask about Slackware. All right, and Steve, tomorrow you have your Sunday morning coffee clutch. I saw the notification, and I said set reminder.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna do something a little maybe different. I read an article by Jack Wallen from Tech Republic about 5 things to do to get Linux to double-digit adoption. We shall see.
Interesting. Well, I hope a lot of people stop by. And then tomorrow at 1 p.m. or 1300, if you prefer the 24-hour clock, Eastern, there's the Destination Linux streaming live. And so you can listen to Michael, Ryan, and the adult Jill in the room as they talk about their Linux journey. I don't know what's on the docket for tomorrow. So I highly recommend you check out Linux User Space. They did a review of Slackware, and they went into the history of it. They dug really deep. It was an amazing deep dive into Slackware that I'm sure nobody has ever done ever on the internet ever, or probably ever will again. So it was a great episode. Check it out, Linux User Space podcast. The next Linux Out Loud will be talking about our third-party repositories in Linux. So it was an interesting conversation. If you are interested, check out Linux Out Loud. And then anything more on me, go to cubiclate.com. I do stuff. So I want to thank you all for being a part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts the personal back into personal computer. So thank you all for stopping by, and be sure to tip your developers, and please always remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Ciao.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.